Welcome to Entwined Podcast. Before we jump into episode 19, I wanted to take a few minutes to say thank you for listening to the show. So thank you. Whether you're a loyal listener, an occasional listener, or brand new to the show, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day to hear our stories. We absolutely love getting feedback, so keep it coming. If you want to support the show, there's a few ways you can go ahead and make that happen. The first, which is easy peasy lemon squeezy, is to head on over to patreon.com/entwined and sign up. Every nickel helps us keep the lights on. The second is actually a little bit easier than that. If you like the show, then tell a friend. Tell your mom. Heck, tell a stranger's mom. Just get the word out there for us. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, YouTube, and Instagram. You can find us, Entwined Podcast. The third, which is a little more complicated, is to drop us a review in iTunes. This, strangely enough, really does help more people have an opportunity to see us in their feeds. We're not begging for good reviews here, just help us capture a few honest ones. So yeah, that's about it. Thank you all so much for listening and stay twined. Entwined is a podcast about how so much of the world around us is wound or twisted together. This podcast strives to lay bare unexposed or indiscernible connections using historical and anecdotal sources. I am Elliot Gladstone, and alongside P.S. McKay, this is Entwined. If you're anything like me, Thanksgiving around your house walks the fine line between pleasure and pain. No, it's good, it really is. But every year there seems to be magical forces at work, making sure people don't leave with the idea to immediately return back for another meal the following weekend. Once a year is enough, right? It's a lot to deal with. It is. It really is. But if just about every television show ever has taught us anything, it's that this is a time to be thankful. So we go through our days being thankful for the things we find most important. Our families. Sometimes we can find thankfulness in the company of close friends, a neighbor, maybe a shaggy dog, or even that elusive retail doorbuster. Overall, general thankfulness across the board. It's amazing that no matter where you are on Thanksgiving Day, it's basically the same thing. Oh, okay, fair point. I get it. Not everyone spends the day with their family and friends, or even that shaggy mutt of a dog. But for a giant chunk of the population, this is exactly what Thanksgiving has become. Mom is rushing around the kitchen, trying to ensure 32 different side dishes are on schedule to be done at the same time the bird is roasting in the oven. Dad sits on the couch. I mean, seriously, he barely moves all day, to the point that there is a divot in the couch beneath him. He sits, and he watches football, chatting up whomever has managed to find a seat next to him. The topic of this wonderful conversation, you ask? Politics. Yep, Pops gets after the political candidate or party of his choice and warns everyone who will listen of the dangers ahead. He might even say something like, "Here's what they should do," or "If I were president." And despite not drinking much, it's clear his glass is half empty. It's actually funny, because no matter how positive Dad is for the rest of the year, the Thanksgiving Dad is a completely different animal. Sometimes the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade is on the television, but more appropriately the football game is on, and the volume is about 10 clicks louder than it should be. This means there's normally some ridiculous debate about the Cowboys since they are always on, which generally transitions into an argument of some sort. And because the TV is so loud, people are shouting, which brings some quality tension to a group of men who are not even Cowboy fans. Uncles and brothers-in-law go back and forth about why the team sucks this season, and then what the coach needs to do to be a winner and to start winning some games. I don't say anything. But it's basically the same conversation Dad is having about politics, just with X's and O's instead of elephants and donkeys. One of the uncles demands everyone name their favorite team, and before anyone can answer, a shout can be heard from the bathroom as one of the kids who's sitting on the toilet screams, "49ers" at the top of their lungs, as if part of the conversation for the entire time. It's always the same thing. Always. Someone shows up early, like before you get into party clothes early, and at least one of the family strolls in an hour after dinner was even served. Oh, and the dinner. It's truly amazing, isn't it? Roasted turkey, candied yams, bread, beans, mashed potatoes, stuffing with all the fixings. It's right there on the table, and there seems to be an endless supply of it. Dad carves the turkey, and inevitably someone makes a dark meat joke, which garners a few snickers to Mom's predictable chagrin. You know, normal Thanksgiving stuff. Then, as the sun sets, belts loosen, and that weird uncle seems to have fallen asleep, with his hand down the front of his pants, we find ways to bring closure to the night. We ease up on each other just a little bit. Maybe this is because we're stuffed, or maybe it's because we know there isn't much left to endure before heading home to beach ourselves on the bed or couch of our choice. So we're thankful. We're always thankful because it's Thanksgiving, and that's what happens. So, well, why do we do this? I guess it all goes back to September of 1620, when just over 100 folks set sail for the New World on a ship called the Mayflower. Now, most of this is covered right around 4th grade in most schools, so we won't spend too much time. But after 2 months at sea, plus a bonus round of a month or so searching for the right parking spot, the Pilgrims landed with high hopes to establish a village at Plymouth. When they landed, they actually lived out of that ship for 3 months. This actually initially surprised me. But then thinking about it, well, when they arrived, it really wasn't a buyer's market, was it? And the only shelter would have been the boat. Unfortunately, many who survived the long journey across the Atlantic died from scurvy or disease the winter after reaching their destination. As the land thaws, someone on board decides that it's just about time to get those shelters built, and those who are still alive move off the boat to start their new lives. This is when a Native American man named Squanto taught the 53 remaining pilgrims how to live off the land. Squanto was kind of a big deal. He taught them to fish, to farm, to get sap from local maple trees, and most importantly, he helped form a relationship with the Wampanoag tribe. The Pilgrims and the Wampanoag celebrated the harvest with a giant 3-day-long feast, which thanks to Abraham Lincoln we now refer to as the 4th Thursday in November, or Thanksgiving. Alright, that explains the tradition of the excessive feast, but it does little to explain the patriarch's penchant for political debate. Also, it's not really clear what giant hot air balloon cartoon characters have to do with the traditional American history. We all do it, even if for a moment, but we all do it. We click around in the morning looking for something interesting, only to find that the Thanksgiving parade is pretty much the only game in town until about 11 o'clock on the West Coast. I was shocked to know that the concept of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade is really almost about 100 years old, dating back to 1920. In November of 1920, the Gimbel Brothers department store, or you may know it as Gimbel's, staged the world's first Thanksgiving parade down Market Street in the middle of Philadelphia. The parade was officially known as Gimbel's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and over the years capitalism hijacked the moniker, and as the parade has moved on, it is now known as the ABC Dunkin' Donuts Thanksgiving Day Parade. The NBC offering is more popular and is the one which gets more airtime in the Gladstone household, and that one is the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. The Macy's Parade marched into our hearts and down the famous 34th Street in New York City just 4 short years after Gimbel's in November of 1924. One of the more interesting aspects of the first Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade was that it wasn't a Thanksgiving parade at all. In fact, it was actually officially referred to as the Macy's Christmas Parade, and in its first year, it spanned 6 full miles from Harlem to Herald Square. But my favorite fact about the first Macy's Parade has to be that the Central Park Zoo loaned out several animals to march along with the parade. Yes, bears marched. Elephants marched, monkeys did what monkeys do, and camels, Well, I'm pretty sure they just spit and walked around. But by the time the animals reached the end of the 6-mile walk, they were irritable and frightened the younger children along the route. In the years that would follow, the live animals would be replaced by giant animal-shaped and cartoon-themed hot air balloons, which have become a staple of the parade still seen today. The parade didn't really become a national phenomenon until after the release of the movie Miracle on 34th Street in 1947. The parade was picked up in the early 40s for local television, but the Thanksgiving after the release of the film, it was broadcast nationally, which has continued through today. I realize that it's possible for many of you to never have seen or heard of this film. I mean, it's a huge tradition in many families, but I get it. I know not everyone has seen it, like, well, Mrs. Gladstone. The movie in no way is exclusively about the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, but a lot of it was shot in and around the parade on location in New York City. Film companies can make a lot of impossible things happen, but putting the parade on their schedule, yeah, not so much. So, the director took on the logistical nightmare of having to shoot scenes in different spots along the route almost all at once. All at once. And even more importantly, each scene was really just shot once, which was an amazing feat considering in some scenes, the film team was working with a child actress in the infancy of her career. Miracle on 34th Street starred Edmund Gwenn as Santa Claus, who was selected to replace a drunk Santa for the Macy's department store. A child actress and Russian immigrant named Natasha Zherenko played the role of a young girl named Susan Walker, who senses there is something more to this old man playing the role of Santa. Natasha was an adorable young girl who played her part well, and being of such a young age, she actually believed Edmund Gwenn was the real Santa Claus. You see, Miracle on 34th Street wasn't just about holiday logistics, and it wasn't about parades and floats either. It was a movie with a foundation bricked together with faith. It was a movie about love and happiness. Most importantly, the young girl, Susan Walker, teaches us that imagination can be a gift to be unwrapped each and every day. Macy's was a company that in its early stages was never short on imagination. Oh sure, tons of companies can claim imagination or thinking creatively, but there are only a few which can claim trailblazer status. Roland Husey Macy, more famously R.H. Macy, was well known for his creative business strategies, which provided some of the structure for what retail has become today. But in 1866, it was the fact that he promoted a woman, Margaret Getchell, into an executive position that put him on the thinking outside the box map. I mean, let's be honest, for the time period, what are we talking about, pre-1900s? It was a hugely brave move to promote a woman in the way that he did, which, in my opinion, made him president of thinking outside the box. Macy felt women were equal to men and just as capable, so he promoted Margaret Getchell to be the first ever woman executive to work in retail sales. Getchell wasn't short on innovation and imagination either, and in a short time was able to increase sales and grow the Macy's organization, which including diversifying their product offerings. Margaret pushed, and eventually Macy would agree to install soda fountains for parched customers, which would be duplicated for years to come. Margaret Getchell may have been best known for her celebrated window displays, and that effort and ingenuity can still be seen walking down 34th Street in New York City today. It all started when plate glass became more available and stores were able to showcase their goods with the hopes of drawing in more customers. Getchell was right there leading this creative charge as the concept of window shopping was born. In fact, Macy's was one of the very first stores to construct holiday window presentations, which would delight people of all ages for years to come. While under Getchell's watch, Macy's was also the first department store to have a Santa Claus bunkered down on site for children to stop and visit. Deliberate or not, Macy's had started to master the concept of holiday logistics, and the imagination and creativity would prove absolutely contagious. More and more stores in the major cities around the United States started to follow Margaret Getchell's lead, and these window presentations started to become an actual thing. Get this, people used to wait in line outside the department stores to see these presentations unveiled. Wait in line. Outside. Amazing. These things were elaborate, like seriously detailed, and the large stores started to draw attention of budding artists. You might be interested to know that Andy Warhol once designed window presentations before he was, well, Andy Warhol. Some other greats who got their start in the craft were Jasper Johns, Salvador Dali, and Maurice Sendak. Detail. A tremendous amount of detail went into these presentations, which included the painting of the actual glass. The space between the walls would often have the store logo, or other offerings from that host department store, and from time to time, Santa Claus or Thanksgiving turkey would land somewhere on the window. Fast forward now to 1950, and a humble secretary working directly for the chairman of the board of a major bank would sit and watch these windows be painted and repainted. The secretary, a woman named Betty Neesmith Graham, had an eye for detail and noticed that rather than erase the mistakes, these painters would just cover the design with another layer of paint. This got Betty's creative juices going, and as a secretary, she immediately saw a way to successfully parlay the painter's technique into her everyday job. Yep, Betty Neesmith Graham invented liquid paper. You know the stuff. All right, maybe you don't. So once upon a time, there were these Neanderthal machines called typewriters, and guess what? When you made a mistake, you couldn't delete it. You actually had to start over at the beginning of the page. Well, I guess that was until Betty Graham happened. Neesmith made quite a name for herself as her idea skyrocketed, mainly because of its usefulness. The liquid paper company would end up being worth millions and allowed her to provide a nice life for her family, which included son Michael Neesmith. Michael Neesmith was an artist, but he wasn't a window designer, and he certainly wasn't employed to play Santa Claus at Macy's. Michael was a monkey. No, Betty didn't adopt a monkey, and these were not the same kind of monkeys who appeared in the first ever Macy's parade. Michael was, he was one of the monkeys, like, hey, we're the Monkeys, the band. Michael Neesmith was an original member of the band who was made famous because of a television show in the 60s. For those of you who are trying to picture the Monkeys in your head right now and are only able to conjure up an image of Davy Jones, well, let me provide you some assistance. Michael Neesmith was the one normally wearing the beanie hat and playing guitar. The show was basically about a fictional band in the style of what the Beatles accomplished in A Hard Day's Night. But in this case, the fictional band actually ended up becoming a real band. The Monkeys were popular over the years and were able to land gigs all around the world. One of those gigs included playing in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade as it rolled down 34th Street in New York City. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade has played host to hundreds of artists like the Monkees over the years. It isn't just for musicians, although those do seem to always find a home riding on a float, but also actors, politicians, television personalities, and even cartoon characters. The parade started in 1924, and as I mentioned before, it gained popularity after the release of the movie Miracle on 34th Street. So that puts us about 90 years deep into celebrity appearance after celebrity appearance. Well, there's a lot of celebrities who have appeared, but one actress who always seemed to be invited to the event was a woman by the name of Natalie Wood. It should be noted that in 1979, she was the parade grand marshal, and there is video of this moment on YouTube. It's kind of a classic television moment. Bob Eubanks, you may remember him from the Newlywed Game, addresses the audience and announces Natalie Wood and her husband Robert Wagner as Grand Marshal. "Oh, Bob, who's that on the float with them?" "Well, yes, that would be Santa Claus." Classic, absolutely classic. Natalie Wood was absolutely gorgeous and drenched in fame as a result of a long and prolific career in cinema. In 1981, around the exact time the Monkees were doing a revival tour and appearing in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, she was in production on a film called Brainstorm. Okay, I must admit here, I haven't actually seen that specific film, but it starred her and Christopher Walken in what was billed as a science fiction thriller. Movie production schedules can be abusive, but this director afforded his crew some much-needed time off over the Thanksgiving Day holiday weekend. So, with the escape and a little R&R on her mind, Wood invited Walken to join her and her husband Robert Wagner on their boat for the long weekend. What would happen next would be the topic of continued speculation and potential conspiracy because of the 4 people on that boat: Robert Wagner, Christopher Walken, Natalie Wood, and the ship's captain. Only 3 would return to shore alive. I'm not going to get into all of the conspiracy theories here because you all know that's not what the show is about. But what is known for sure is that 3 actors were drinking, and Natalie decided to head to bed at some point on the night of November 28th, 1981. Later, husband Robert Wagner headed up to check on her and discovered that she was not in her cabin, and there was also a dinghy missing. We also know that there was some argument between the 3, which could have been sparked by Walken's relationship with Wood, whatever that means. Now, there has been some debate about what happened next, as over the years a bunch of new crap has come to light. True? Who knows? But what does matter is that Natalie Wood was found floating in the water off the coast of Catalina Island on the morning of November 29th, 1981, along with the missing dinghy. Her death would officially be ruled an accidental drowning, and all of a sudden, this hardly feels like Thanksgiving. Natalie Wood passed away at the young age of 43, and there were so many who mourned her, and still more who celebrated the life she lived. I mean, she was Maria from West Side Story, for gosh sakes. She played Judy in Rebel Without a Cause. She was Debbie from the movie The Searchers, which is one of the single greatest westerns of all time. She was in films like From Here to Eternity, The Candidate, and Splendor in the Grass. Natalie Wood was a star and an icon and had been acting in films since she was a young girl. In fact, one of her most famous roles this time of year was when she played little Susan Walker in the original movie Miracle on 34th Street. Natasha Zarenko, the daughter of Russian immigrants, changed her name at a young age to Natalie Wood. And Natalie died 35 years to the day after she made those famous parade scenes for the movie in 1946. So this Thanksgiving, this Christmas, this whatever you celebrate, as you sit there and Pops is waxing poetic about some politician he despises, and your brother-in-law passes out from one too many, just remember what the holidays are all about. They're about family. They're about faith. They're about love. And if we've learned anything from little Natasha in Miracle on 34th Street, it's important to be able to find joy in the happiness that you give others. Thank you for listening. This has been Entwined. Entwined is a podcast that releases every other week and is written, recorded, edited, and produced by Elliot Gladstone and P.S. McKay. This episode was written by Elliot Gladstone. Please tune in next time to see what P.S. McKay has in store for us. For more information about the show or the authors, please check out entwinedpodcast.com or visit our Twitter page at entwinedpodcast.